Putting money into a Scotch bottle means you want the right choice, but it's tough if you're not familiar with the flavors or prices. Costly bottles aren't always better, and affordable ones aren't automatically weak. With so many options, it's easy for people to feel a bit dizzy. So we figured, why not put together a ranked list of 15 Scotch brands to help you sort through the choices and pick confidently. 15. J&B Rare. Back in the 1970s, J&B Rare was basically everywhere because it perfectly matched that era's party vibe. Whether it was a Hollywood gathering or a noisy cocktail bar where everything flowed by the gallon. People loved splashing it into soda or pouring it into a tumbler because it fit the mood of the moment. Although what worked during the disco years doesn't quite land the same way today. The blend now feels stripped back, faintly sweet, and extremely light, so it comes across like something that's missing its character. Because the grain whiskey takes over everything, you get a tiny flash of citrus and a whiff of ethanol that fades before you can even think about it. Its biggest strength these days is nostalgia, so it still works for guests who don't love Scotch and for anyone stocking up in bulk. But flavor-wise, it simply can't compete with bolder malts. Its legacy feels more cultural than culinary because it's similar to an old song that sounds better in your memory than in real life. Considering all this, J&B Rare ends up at the bottom because its retro charm can't hide the fact that the whiskey itself feels bland and hollow. 14. Johnnie Walker. Johnnie Walker is one of those Scotch brands everyone recognizes instantly because that iconic striding man logo and the familiar square bottle show up almost everywhere, from busy airport bars to fancy lounges. The brand built its entire identity on blended Scotch, which means its whiskeys combine different styles to maintain a consistent flavor. And this approach created its famous color-based lineup with red, black, gold, and blue labels. Even though the blue label is considered an ultra-smooth premium option, its high price tag doesn't fully match what you get, especially since it's still a blend. But the brand sits here because it's massively popular and incredibly accessible. Its lower-priced labels like red and black are straightforward and great for cocktails, so people often choose them without overthinking it. Johnnie Walker is reliable, familiar, and easy to recommend, although it stays more of an introductory Scotch at heart. 13. Dewar's carries a deep history because it began as a family business in 1846 and eventually evolved into a global name thanks to John Dewar Sr.'s sons, who pushed it into worldwide recognition. They earned awards, promoted the whiskey through travel adventures, and even secured a place in American history when kegs were gifted to presidential events. Dewar's became even more established after the Aberlour distillery opened, and over time it shifted ownership, expanded its presence, and kept earning respect. But the modern version feels like a faded echo of what it once was. Because the aroma promises honey and vanilla, you might expect richness, although the taste ends up mostly grain-heavy with just a soft hint of malt. It's smooth, but only in the same simple way water is smooth, so there's not much to explore or savor. Dewar's white label shows how the brand now depends more on reputation than flavor, because it's mild, inoffensive, and ultimately forgettable. 12. Monkey Shoulder. Monkey Shoulder stands out because it was created specifically for mixing, so it fits perfectly for anyone who enjoys Scotch-based cocktails but still wants something with personality. It comes from William Grant & Sons, a respected producer, and unlike many blended whiskeys, this one is made entirely from single malts. That's why it has a fuller, richer body, making sure it doesn't disappear when mixed into drinks. It brings together sweet honey notes, rich malt, and a soft touch of smoke, creating something balanced and versatile. Because of this combination, Monkey Shoulder works well for a bunch of different cocktails and fits neatly into any home bar without stretching your budget. Although it's not the best option for drinking neat, it shines when used the way it was intended. Monkey Shoulder earns this mid-list ranking because it's functional, dependable, and perfect for mixing, even though the Scotch brands above it offer more depth when enjoyed on their own. 11. Glenmorangie. Glenmorangie is one of those brands that makes Scotch feel accessible because it keeps things light, fruity, and smooth. Since it dates back to 1843 and belongs to the Highland region, it carries a long-standing reputation for gentle flavors and easygoing texture. The brand's mascot, the giraffe, might seem random at first, although it makes perfect sense because the distillery uses exceptionally tall stills, roughly the height of that animal. Its lineup moves from the classic 10-year to the richer 18-year, but all of them share that soft, citrus-forward Highland character. Because Glenmorangie avoids heavy smoke or intense complexity, it becomes a perfect entry point for someone discovering Scotch. The simplicity might feel underwhelming for an experienced drinker, but it's also what makes this brand timeless and reliable. Even though it can't rise higher in the ranking, Glenmorangie stays a trustworthy choice that delivers consistency without stretching your budget. 10. Glenfiddich. Glenfiddich remains one of the most influential Highland single malts because it helped define what people expect from the category. The brand has been operating since 1887, and the fact that William Grant built the distillery himself with help from his children gives it a story rooted in patience and craftsmanship. Glenfiddich 12-year became the world's best-selling single malt in 2017, which shows how widely loved it is. The brand expands beyond that with several signature bottles, a grand series, experimental releases, and even rare expressions aged for decades. Its flavor profile is clear, crisp, and classically Highland, partly because it uses water from its own private spring. And even though the higher-ranked brands offer more nuance or intensity, Glenfiddich stays a safe, fair-priced, and flavorful choice. It represents the dependable middle ground, not the most complex, but undeniably iconic. 9. The Glenlivet. The Glenlivet is practically unavoidable in the world of Scotch because it's been around since 1822 and remains one of the most recognizable Speyside whiskies. Because Speyside distilleries sit along the River Spey, their whiskies share certain Highland similarities, although they tend to be more delicate, refined, and slightly briny. The Glenlivet 12-year perfectly captures those traits, delivering a smooth and approachable flavor that works for beginners and regular drinkers alike. Beyond its signature expression, the brand experiments with aging styles, including the Caribbean Reserve, which picks up bright rum cask flavors. One of the biggest strengths of the Glenlivet is how affordable and widely available it is, so it consistently shows up anywhere spirits are sold. Even though it just misses the top 10, the brand stays dependable, approachable, and confident in its identity, making it a Scotch many people return to again and again. 8. Ardbeg. Ardbeg marks the point in the list where the unmistakable spirit of Islay finally shows up, because this region is known for peat that's richer, smokier, and more assertive than almost anywhere else. Even though peated Scotch exists in multiple regions, Ardbeg shows why Islay remains the benchmark. Since opening in 1815 under John McDougall, the distillery has built its identity around boldness, especially with the famous 10-year expression. It's considered one of the peatiest bottles out there, and that intense character creates a strong divide. Some people love its smoky punch, while others find it forceful compared to similar peated whiskeys. But its popularity comes from that unwavering identity, because the brand keeps releasing expressions like the 8-year, 19-year, and 25-year that maintain the same spirit. Although Ardbeg delivers unmistakable Islay flavor, its higher price point pushes it slightly lower, so it comfortably settles at number 8. 7. Bruichladdich. Bruichladdich may be younger than many Scotch brands, only re-emerging in 2001, but it carries itself with an impressive sense of purpose because it highlights the landscape of Islay with unusual dedication. In 2020, it even earned B Corp certification, showing how seriously it takes sustainability and social responsibility. The brand supports local agriculture by using organically grown Islay barley and fully converting its production to green energy. Although it's based on an island famous for smoky whiskies, Bruichladdich surprises people because its flagship bottle, the classic Laddie, is unpeated, allowing the natural grain to stand out instead of relying on heavy smoke. Other releases including 8-year, 10-year, and 11-year expressions continue this focus on barley character, even though each bottle still lands at 100 proof, giving the brand a solid kick. Bruichladdich blends thoughtful production with strong flavor, so it earns a confident middle ranking. 6. The Singleton. The Singleton may appear to be a newer name because its 12-year expression launched in 2006, but the whiskey comes from Glenlivet Distillery, a historic Speyside site operating since 1897. The long history shows up in the brand's approach because the whiskeys blend affordability with quality, making older expressions more accessible than expected. Its 12-year, 15-year, and 18-year bottles remain some of the most budget-friendly options in their age groups, so new drinkers can explore well-aged Scotch without spending a fortune. The Singleton also stands out because it's one of the few single malts that openly encourages mixing in cocktails. Its soft citrus notes, rounded honey sweetness, and touch of toffee create a balanced profile that works neat on ice or as a cocktail base. Although the flavor remains mild compared to more intense brands, its mix of history, accessibility, and versatility earns it the 6th spot. 5. Laphroaig. Laphroaig is one of the most iconic names in peated Scotch because it has a flavor that's briny, smoky, salty, and unmistakably powerful. Founded in 1815 and built along the rugged coast of Islay, the distillery draws from its own private peat beds, which is why its unique style has been nearly impossible for others to replicate. The 10-year expression is the backbone of the brand because it delivers everything people expect from hardcore Islay whiskey. Huge smoke, intense peat, and a bold maritime edge. But even though the quality is consistent, Laphroaig doesn't offer the same variety as some competitors. So fans mostly choose between the 10-year and the far more expensive 25-year. Special editions such as Cask Strength or the annual Caerdaeus release add excitement, but the core lineup remains narrow. Still, the 10 years reputation is strong enough to secure Laphroaig a solid top 5 position. 4. Talisker. Talisker occupies a unique place because it blends characteristics from different Scotch regions. The distillery sits on the Isle of Skye, technically part of the Highlands. Yet the surrounding coastline, local peat and sea influence give it a smoky edge reminiscent of Islay. Since 1830, Talisker has crafted whiskeys that reflect their remote environment, and that remoteness gives them a personality unlike anything else. The signature bottles include 10-year, 11-year, 15-year, and 18-year releases, along with occasional special editions, all of which balance honeyed Highland sweetness with a measured layer of peat and gentle smoke. This combination makes Talisker ideal for drinkers who enjoy smoky whiskey but find brands like Laphroaig too aggressive. The 10-year in particular offers distinct character without overwhelming intensity, and it stays reasonably priced. Because it bridges regions so naturally while maintaining its own identity, Talisker earns its strong placement just outside the top 3. 3. Aberlour. Aberlour represents Speyside craftsmanship with a bunch of expressions that show how versatile single malt Scotch can be. Its flagship 12-year double cask matures in both traditional oak and sherry seasoned barrels, so it picks up soft fruitiness, gentle spice, and a smooth texture that feels classically Speyside while still offering depth. The brand extends this approach into its 16-year and 18-year double cask versions, each becoming deeper and more layered as the aging process stretches out. Its most talked about bottle, however, is Aberlour, a powerful cask-strength release inspired by founder James Fleming's philosophy that dilution weakened a whiskey's true character. Despite packing over 60% ABV, Aberlour stays rich and balanced because of its expert maturation. Aberlour consistently blends tradition, strength, and complexity, and since its pricing stays surprisingly fair for the quality, it rightfully opens the top 3. 2. Ledaig. Ledaig stands as one of the few Scotch brands from the Hebrides, owing its identity to Tobermory Distillery on the Isle of Mull. Although the distillery dates back to 1798, its modern chapter didn't fully begin until after the 1990s, because long closures during the 20th century paused its whiskey production. When it returned, the revival brought forward Ledaig, the distillery's peated line, which quickly proved how remarkable Hebridean whiskey can be. The signature range includes a 10-year, an 18-year, and the Rioja Finished Sinclair series. The peat is dense and assertive, although the whiskey stays surprisingly bright because the barley and malt character shines through. It's complex in aroma and flavor, offering layers of smoke, sweetness, and maritime freshness while still being affordable. For a distillery that essentially rebuilt itself, Ledaig's modern achievements are impressive enough to claim the #2 spot. 1. Lagavulin. Lagavulin earns the top position because it represents everything people admire about Islay whiskey while still maintaining balance, depth, and consistency. Founded in 1816 and positioned along the coastline, the distillery benefits from abundant peat and the natural water flowing through the Salon locks, which shapes its signature richness. The famous 16-year expression is the ultimate introduction to Islay. It's smoky and peaty, but also silky, layered, and refined in a way that few whiskeys manage. Although Lagavulin offers additional bottles like the 8-year and the well-loved 11-year Offerman edition, it doesn't rely on gimmicks. Its limited releases come and go, but the brand stays focused on doing one thing exceptionally well. Because its peat is bold without being overwhelming and its overall profile remains iconic, Lagavulin continues to define its category. It stands at #1 because that unmistakable Islay character remains unmatched. Bonus spot, the Macallan. The top position goes to a Scotch brand that practically defines what excellence tastes like. The Macallan, founded back in 1824 in the Highlands near the River Spey, operates on a sprawling 485-acre estate. The landscape around the distillery almost mirrors the quality of the whiskey itself because it captures that same sense of precision and beauty. Even though the Macallan identifies as a Highland single malt, its closeness to the River Spey creates a blend of characteristics that feel like the best of both whiskey worlds. The brand's 2 signature releases are the Double Oak and Sherry Oak lines, each available in 12, 18, and 30-year versions. It also offers the Triple Cask Matured expression, which develops its complexity through aging in European and American ex-sherry barrels, as well as ex-bourbon casks. Beyond these, the Macallan has a bunch of high-end options, including the M Collection, Rare Cask, and Estate Series, so collectors always have something special to look for. A huge part of the Macallan's identity comes from its obsession with wood. The distillery even has a dedicated master of wood, who oversees everything from selecting and seasoning the timber to managing how casks are toasted and prepared. This process spans from North America and Spain all the way to Scotland, and although it's long and detailed, it's exactly why the flavor you get from these barrels is unlike anything else. That commitment to craft is the reason the Macallan is so widely admired and considered the best Scotch brand to buy in 2024. And that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to drop your comment down below and tell us which ranking you think was wrong.